You could be catching a lot more crappies, but you are probably using the wrong technique, wrong bait, and fishing in the wrong areas on the lake. Let me explain. The spawn is on, which means this is the easiest time of the year to learn how to find and catch more crappies. But you're not. So here's what you need to do. Let's take a look. First, you have to understand the spawn. Once water temperatures start to rise on lakes, the movement of crappies from deeper water to shallow water begins. Beginners to crappie fishing need to understand that the water temperature is the key to the spawn. I reside in Pennsylvania. You may reside somewhere else, and the spawn may begin sooner or later, depending upon where you live. Keep that in mind. Now, there are a lot of factors that determine the water temperature. Cold fronts, storms, seasonal changes. It can be different every year and can vary from lake to lake as well as state to state. If we have a hard winter in Pennsylvania, ice out of our lakes can occur anywhere from mid-March to early April. Ideally, in Pennsylvania, the spawn generally occurs when the water temperature reaches anywhere from 68 to 72 degrees. Why does any of this matter? Because crappies want to do two things. They want to feed and they want to make babies, and that's what they're doing now. First, it's the male's responsibility of the species to build the nests. Once the nests are built, females will move in from deeper water and lay their eggs. The males will then fertilize the eggs. And these nests are generally built in the shallows next to vegetation, and then it's the male's responsibility to guard the nest and hatched fry from any and all predators. Understanding the spawn is key to catching more crappies. I'll use my trolling motor and fish for crappies like bass anglers fish for bass. I always use a jig without any extra weight. I'll cast towards the shore and use a slow retrieve back to the boat until I trigger a strike. Now, generally, when you find one, you're going to find more crappies, and that's what you want to do. You focus on the shoreline and you cover lots of water till you find them, and then you can start catching them in numbers, and that's why the jig is important. Too many anglers spend too much time in water that is not productive for catching crappies. It's that simple. You have to be where the crappies are. Obviously, with my injury and surgery, I can't get to the lake this year in the capacity that I would like, but this video will help beginners that want to fish for crappies. When it comes to rod choices, it's really a personal preference, and you'll get all kinds of advice on different types of rods to use. But let's just keep it simple for the beginner. If you want to build your own, this was a kit. My father made this for me years ago. It's an IM6 graphite blank. It has ceramic guides. I love this rod. It just has a certain feel, and I can feel everything with bite and nibble on it. But this is a 6-foot rod, cork handle. I would make sure that you put an ultralight reel on this. I have it spooled with 4-pound test low visibility green line. And the reason for that is the lakes that I fish tend to be stained. They always have kind of a greenish look to the water, and the line just disappears in the water. Maybe the lake you fish or waters you fish might have clear water, and if that's the case, just get ultra low visibility clear. You want to try to match that. You want that presentation of your bait. In this case, we're going to be using tube baits, and I'm going to explain later in the video why I recommend tube baits for finding and locating crappies as quickly as possible during the spawn. This is an ugly stick. It's a 5.5-foot rod. It's got a blank that runs the whole way through the handle. It's very, very sensitive. You're not going to spend tons of money. I have the same type of reel, a Sigma 200 reel, spooled with 4-pound test low visibility green. The eyelets are great. The feel of this rod is great, and they're virtually indestructible. Matter of fact, Ugly Stick claims that if you break one of their rods, they'll replace it. So that's a pretty good deal. Great rod for beginners. So that's my rod choice for fishing for crappies. Now, sometimes I use a fly rod. I use different rods for different reasons. But during the spawn, you want to be able to find your fish and have a rod that you can feel the hit because of the way, the presentation that you're going to use. And we'll get into that when I talk a little bit more about what I'm going to use to catch crappies, tube baits, which is a jig. It's artificial, although I will tip it with a magnet. So that's my rod choice for beginning crappie anglers. This is a 1.5 inch tube bait. It is hollow and is designed to be inserted with a jig head hook. Some anglers will put a round jig head on the outside of the tube bait. That's fine, but the reason I don't do that is the tube bait will eventually slide down the jig hook. Once that happens, crappies, for whatever the reason, won't hit it, and you're always having to slide it back in place. The inserted jig hook looks better and won't slide off the hook. It looks so good in the water. Many times I've caught the limit of crappies on just one tube bait. Eventually, when the bite is hot and heavy, crappies will wear out the tube bait. The jig hook comes in different weight choices, but in my opinion and experience, the best weight to use is a 1/32 ounce jig head, and here's why. If the jig falls too fast through the water column, crappies will often ignore it. Plus, here's a tip. You can determine the depth of a 1/32 ounce tube bait once it hits the water simply by counting. Every second you count, the jig sinks approximately 1 foot under the surface. And I want to keep my jig just above the crappies. Based on my experiences, the spawn is the best time to use a tube bait tipped with a maggot. When it comes to color, my advice is experiment. But I will share with you what I have learned through the years regarding color and what I think are good choices to start with when fishing for crappies. Let me clarify that when it comes to colors, so much isn't the fisherman, it's the fish that really determine the color you're going to use when you're using these tube baits. And I also want to clarify that this is just one technique. You want to find the crappies as quickly as possible. Once you find them, then you can change up your tactics. You can fish with a bobber and a minnow under the bobber, which is a lot of fun, especially for beginners, because you get to see the strike and then react. So these are just some of my colors, and experiment until you find what works. But I'm telling you, you can catch a lot of crappies just using a tube bait tipped with a maggot. And then use whatever technique you like after that. This is just one tool in the toolbox. To summarize, number 1, during the spawn, fish the shorelines that hold nesting areas. 2, cover lots of water, cast and retrieve a jig slowly, but keep the jig off the bottom. Crappies during the spawn will attack anything that comes close to their nests. Number 3, once you catch one, concentrate on that area. There most likely will be more. Crappies school up during the spawn. Number 4, use an ultralight rod and reel. Spool it with 4-pound test ultra low visibility green line. Number 5, use a 1.5 inch tube bait tipped with a maggot. Experiment with color choices. A great color to start with is black and chartreuse. Don't be afraid to try different colors. And here is a conservation tip. Females tend to be much larger than males during the spawn. It's a good idea to catch and release large female crappies so they can lay their eggs. Remember, conservation of the species means there will be lots of crappies for future generations. So there you have it. Not catching many crappies? Well, try the tips and techniques in my video during the spawn, and you should increase the number of crappies you catch. These techniques are for springtime spawn, and as the season progresses and summer creeps in, the spawn will end, and these crappie patterns will change. But that's a subject for another video. I'm Mr. R, and this is the Rondinelli Project. Until next time, we go.